The Dutton legacy is about to face its earliest test. Before the lands were claimed, before the battles for power and survival became legendary, there was a time when the foundation of the Yellowstone Empire was fragile, uncertain, and full of danger. 1969, an era of war, rebellion, and cultural upheaval, sets the stage for the boy who will become the man we know as John Dutton. Every choice, every heartbreak, every betrayal in this year will echo across generations, shaping a dynasty before it even knows its name. This is more than a story about land. It's about blood, loyalty, and the heavy price of legacy. The year 1969 dawns cold and quiet over the sprawling Montana ranch. But beneath the calm, tension simmers like an underground river, ready to burst. Spencer Dutton, now in his late 70s, moves through his days with the careful precision of a man who knows time is slipping faster than the seasons. The ranch is quieter than it will ever be again. Yet Spencer's presence looms like a mountain over the land, commanding respect without ever needing to shout. Every morning he watches the sunrise over Yellowstone, thinking about what he has built and what he still needs to protect. But even the strongest foundations have cracks, and Spencer is about to face one that could shake the family to its core. Young John Dutton, barely 10 years old, is a curious, restless boy with a spark of stubbornness already evident in his eyes. The land calls to him, and he responds instinctively, following his grandfather through the pastures, learning the rhythms of ranch life before he even knows the weight of responsibility that will one day rest on his shoulders. In these early moments, John is not the hardened man of Yellowstone. He is a boy who questions, who feels, who dreams. Yet even at this age, the first lessons of power and family loyalty are etched into him. He watches Spencer carefully, studying how decisions are made, how silence can be as loud as anger, and how patience can often be more deadly than a gun. Meanwhile, the world outside Montana is anything but quiet. The Vietnam War escalates, leaving families torn apart and futures uncertain. Young men across the country are drafted, and whispers reach the ranch that John's father could be called to serve. Spencer's health and age mean he may be forced to step into roles he never expected again, even as he feels the burden of a lifetime pressing down on him. The political and social upheavals of 1969, from civil rights movements to anti-war protests, ripple across the nation, and even in the secluded expanses of the Dutton Ranch, no one is truly untouched. The ranch becomes a microcosm of a country in turmoil, with old traditions clashing against new ideas. And a boy at the center, learning what it means to survive in a world that is changing faster than he can understand. The rodeo circuit pulses with life in the late 60s, and it is here that young John begins to see a world beyond the ranch fences. He is drawn to the thrill of competition, the danger of the arena, and the unspoken rules that govern honor and respect among men who live by their courage and skill. Each ride, each tumble, each victory and defeat shapes him, teaching lessons in resilience and humility that no classroom could ever provide. These are moments that will forge his character, moments that will define how he measures strength, loyalty, and risk. And while he is still a boy, the seeds of the Dutton Iron Will are already being planted in his heart. Back at the ranch, Spencer is not the only figure guiding John. Elizabeth, now older and stronger, watches from a distance, her presence both a comfort and a silent challenge. She knows the stakes of the family legacy, and she quietly maneuvers to ensure that her son's inheritance is secured, knowing that Spencer's authority may not last forever. Their interactions are tense, layered with unspoken alliances and quiet battles for influence. Every word, every gesture is a chess move in a game that will stretch decades. Young John observes, absorbing these lessons without fully understanding the depth of the conflict around him. And yet, even in his innocence, he begins to grasp that the path to power is never straightforward, and that loyalty and betrayal are often two sides of the same coin. The first days of 1969 are a delicate balance of routine and disruption. Spencer walks the land, John follows in awe, and Elizabeth waits for the moment to step forward. Outside, the world rages on with war, protest, and change. Inside, the Dutton family faces battles that are just as fierce, just as personal. Each choice they make, each lesson they teach, each secret they keep will reverberate through generations. This is the crucible in which Yellowstone's legacy is forged, where the boy who will one day inherit the largest ranch in Montana begins to learn the price of power, the weight of family, and the cost of legacy. Every sunrise, every storm, every quiet night under the endless Montana sky is a building block, shaping a future that none of them can fully see yet, but all of them are destined to live. The Dutton Ranch may look peaceful on the surface, but the calm hides shadows that will stretch across generations. Spencer knows the value of silence. Every creak in the barn, every unexpected hoofbeat, every hushed conversation carries meaning. Secrets are the lifeblood of the Dutton legacy, and in 1969, the first seeds of future conflict are quietly planted. John is beginning to notice these subtle tensions, though he cannot yet name them. He sees the way Spencer studies every visitor, every neighbor, as if measuring their loyalty against some invisible scale. He sees the way Elizabeth moves, careful, deliberate, always with an agenda. And slowly, he begins to understand that being a Dutton is not just about owning land, it is about navigating a world where every relationship carries risk, and every choice has consequences. Spencer's health, already fragile, begins to cast a shadow over the ranch. Each cough, each pause in his step, reminds John and Elizabeth that time is an enemy as formidable as any rival family or legal battle. The thought that Spencer may not be around forever is frightening, but it also ignites a quiet urgency. The ranch cannot simply endure, it must thrive, and it is young John who will eventually bear the brunt of that responsibility. In the meantime, he learns patience in observing, listening in on adult conversations, piecing together fragments of power, greed, and pride that swirl around him. Even as a boy, John recognizes that strength alone is not enough. Intelligence, timing, and the ability to read people are equally crucial, and the seeds of these lessons are sown now. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's influence grows quietly but unmistakably. She has her own vision for the ranch and the family, and it is one that sometimes clashes with Spencer's old-school ideas. Elizabeth understands negotiation and strategy in ways that Spencer, brilliant but traditional, often overlooks. She also knows the importance of securing her son's future. Every subtle move, every word whispered in the right ear, every careful observation of John's reactions is calculated to give her family an advantage when the inevitable storms arrive. John, ever perceptive, notices the tension between his elders, sensing the unspoken power struggles, though he still feels like a spectator in a game much larger than himself. Outside the Dutton household, the world of 1969 intrudes in unexpected ways. Vietnam looms, a distant thundercloud threatening to consume young men across the nation. Draft notices stir fear and anxiety in communities large and small. Families who once thrived suddenly confront the cruel randomness of fate, and Montana, though remote, is not immune. The possibility that John's father could be called to war forces Spencer to step up in ways he hadn't anticipated, assuming responsibility for guidance and protection with the knowledge that time is slipping by and danger is never far away. Even in these formative years, John begins to feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, like the Montana wind across the open plains. The Cultural Revolution of the late 60s also begins to brush against the ranch in small but meaningful ways. Music, politics, and shifting social norms start to infiltrate even the secluded world of the Duttons. John, curious and eager, hears the whispers of rebellion and change, the news of protests and marches that challenge authority and tradition. While he is still a boy, these stories plant ideas about freedom, fairness, and justice in his mind, creating the early tension between loyalty to family and awareness of the larger world. These lessons, subtle but powerful, will shape his character as profoundly as the horseback rides, the long days in the pasture, and the brutal lessons of loss and endurance. Amid these pressures, young John also begins to face the first true interpersonal challenges that will define him. Other ranch families, neighbors, and visiting hands bring rivalries, tests of courage, and lessons in negotiation. He witnesses fights, learns which alliances are trustworthy, and sees firsthand that respect is earned through action, not inherited through name or title. At the same time, the dynamics within the Dutton family grow more complex. Elizabeth quietly challenges Spencer's authority in ways that force John to watch and evaluate. These moments are his first exposure to the intricate dance of family politics, a prelude to the intense conflicts he will face in adulthood. Even with all this pressure, there are moments of innocence and warmth. Early mornings with Spencer in the pasture, evenings by the fire listening to stories of past triumphs, and occasional playful interactions with animals and farmhands remind John of what it feels like to be a child. These fleeting glimpses of normalcy, however, are fragile, and they are constantly juxtaposed with the looming reality of responsibility, danger, and power. The tension between childhood freedom and the expectations of legacy is never far from John's mind, even if he cannot articulate it yet. By the end of this early stage of 1969, it becomes clear the Dutton Ranch is not simply a piece of land. It is a living entity, full of secrets, power, and unspoken rules. John Dutton, still a boy, stands at the edge of this world, beginning to understand that life here will be beautiful, brutal, and unforgiving all at once. Every lesson, every observation, every quiet confrontation in this formative year is shaping him into the man who will one day inherit not just a ranch, but a legacy that will span generations. Suspense, danger, and emotion are woven into the very soil of Yellowstone, and 1969 is the year that lays the first stone in the Dutton Empire. By the middle of 1969, the Dutton Ranch is no longer just a home. It is a battlefield where loyalty, strategy, and survival are tested daily. Spencer, while physically slower, remains the unspoken force holding everything together. His decisions are calculated, deliberate, and often merciless. Every ranch hand, every visitor, every minor dispute is weighed against the larger vision of keeping the Dutton legacy alive. Young John watches these interactions closely, absorbing the lessons hidden in silence, noticing which men respect Spencer and which push boundaries. The boy is learning quickly that strength is not only about muscle or courage, it is about timing, observation, and understanding human nature. Even at 10 years old, John senses the invisible rules that govern the ranch, the delicate balance of power, respect, and fear, and begins to internalize them, laying the foundation for the man he is destined to become. The first serious threat to the family's peace comes in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Neighbors with long memories, distant relatives with grudges, and outsiders who see opportunity where the Duttons see tradition all begin testing the family's defenses. Spencer's health and age make these challenges feel more urgent. He cannot respond with the same ferocity he once could, forcing John and Elizabeth into positions where they must yet think ahead, anticipate consequences, and understand the cost of every decision. This is where the first cracks in the family dynamic begin to appear. John observes how Elizabeth maneuvers, how she uses influence, charm, and intellect to protect her son and secure their place on the land. It is in these quiet conflicts, unnoticed by most, that the boy first sees the dangerous intersection of love, loyalty, and strategy. Meanwhile, the world outside Montana grows more volatile. News of Vietnam, of protests and unrest, filters into the ranch through newspapers, radios, and visitors. The national unrest mirrors the undercurrents on the ranch. Some young men leave for war, some return broken, and some simply vanish from the lives of those who expected them home. These stories instill a sense of urgency and fragility in John. He begins to understand that the Dutton Ranch, no matter how vast or seemingly untouchable, exists in a world where outside forces can strike without warning. Survival is not guaranteed by strength alone. It requires foresight, adaptability, and the willingness to act before threats fully materialize. John's education in the ways of the Dutton legacy is relentless. Spencer teaches him horseback riding with precision, stressing endurance and control. He learns the rhythm of the land, the patterns of the cattle, the subtleties of water rights and grazing schedules, and the complex web of neighborly relationships that can shift on a whim. These lessons are not gentle. They are rigorous and often punishing, intended to prepare a boy who will inherit more than land. He will inherit the burdens of a family name and the expectations of generations. Each lesson is infused with danger, even if John doesn't yet realize it. A misstep could cost more than pride. It could cost trust, influence, or survival. Amidst these pressures, Elizabeth's influence grows ever more calculated. She is no longer the observer. She is a force in her own right. Her strategies, quiet but powerful, often challenge Spencer's decisions, creating tension that John cannot ignore. He watches his grandfather and mother in constant negotiation. sometimes open, often silent, and begins to understand the fragile balance between respect and rebellion. Elizabeth is determined to secure her son's future, but her ambition is subtle, precise, and sometimes ruthless. Young John senses the stakes, but cannot yet grasp the full scope of her determination. These lessons in political and emotional strategy are as crucial as his lessons in cattle or horseback riding. Rival families and outsiders continue to test the Duttons. One minor land dispute evolves into a tense standoff, forcing Spencer, Elizabeth, and John to weigh the cost of confrontation. The boy is placed in situations where courage and restraint must coexist, and the lessons of patience and foresight are impressed upon him. He learns that family loyalty often requires sacrifice, and that even small decisions can ripple across years, affecting inheritance, reputation, and survival. John's character is forged in these moments, and even as a boy, he begins to understand that the world is neither fair nor forgiving. Every action has consequences, and every failure carries weight. Amid all the tension, there are moments of fragile connection. John finds solace in the quiet corners of the ranch, early mornings in the stables, evenings watching the sunset over the mountains, nights by the fire listening to Spencer recount stories of the family's past triumphs and failures. These moments are precious, reminders of the love and bond that underpins the harsh lessons of power and survival. They are fleeting, however, as new threats and challenges constantly emerge. The land itself is unforgiving, and every decision, whether about cattle, water, neighbors, or family, carries the potential to ignite conflict. By the end of this section, the stakes are clear. The Dutton family legacy is fragile, external threats are real, and internal tensions are growing. John Dutton, still a boy, stands on the precipice of understanding the full weight of what it means to be a Dutton. Every rivalry, every secret, every strategic move around him is shaping the boy into a man who will one day inherit not just a ranch, but a dynasty. Suspense, danger, and intrigue weave through every moment, setting the stage for the dramatic conflicts and personal growth that will define 1969 and the generations to come. As 1969 unfolds, the Dutton Ranch becomes a pressure cooker where every choice reverberates far beyond the fences. Young John begins to understand that the world is full of people whose loyalty is fleeting and whose ambitions may clash with the family he is destined to protect. He observes subtle betrayals, quiet manipulations, and the consequences of misplaced trust. A ranch hand, trusted for years, may make a misstep or act in his own interest, and John sees how Spencer handles it, calmly, decisively, and with a knowledge that even mercy can be a weapon. These early lessons in betrayal are crucial. They teach him that authority is not only earned, but constantly tested, and that vigilance is the cost of survival. The boy is beginning to understand that family is more than blood. It is a network of alliances, obligations, and shared sacrifice, and those who fail to respect that will pay a price. At the same time, young John begins to experience glimpses of friendship, loyalty, and even first love. A neighbor's child, a girl with fierce independence and sharp wit, challenges him, teases him, and inspires him to think beyond the ranch. Their interactions are playful, yet loaded with emotional complexity. John discovers that loyalty is not only about family, but also about trust earned between equals, and that love, even innocent, youthful love, can carry lessons that shape the heart as much as the mind.